Welcome to the Holistic Feline and Friends podcast, home for all things holistic and healthful for our pets. I'm your host, Angela, also known as the Holistic Feline on Instagram. This episode, along with several others, are dedicated to my soul kitty, Monkey Bean, who I lost to small cell intestinal lymphoma in 2017. I miss you every day of my life, and may our journey together carry on, and may we continue to help others along the way. With love to you, Monkey. I love you always. In the last episode, we spoke to Dr. Kendra Pope, who is one of 4 integrative veterinary oncologists in the U.S. and quite possibly the world. In this episode, I welcome founder of Adored Beast Apothecary, Julie Ann Lee, to continue the discussion on cancer in pets. For the past several years, Julie has been spearheading a 2-part canine cancer research project out of Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia. This research delivered profound new findings, and she walks us through every detail. In addition, Adored Beast Apothecary newly released a product conceived from part 1 of the canine cancer research. We talk about how it's changing the game in cellular health, chronic disease, and cancer prevention and support. And there's more. Julie talks part 2 of the canine cancer research and how it will soon go into live studies and trials at a vet university. By the end, the hope is to yield a natural cancer treatment that will go into the hands of veterinary hospitals. Today, I am sharing with you a company and human I respect and adore greatly. My love for Adored Beast Apothecary is far and wide. One listen to this episode and you will know exactly why. With integrity, the animals, and the planet at the heart and core of everything she does, a pioneer in more ways than one, it's my absolute honor to introduce Julie Ann Lee. Hello, Julie. Welcome. It's such an honor to have you. Thank you for joining us. You are a legend in homeopathic, holistic, and natural supplements for pets and a pioneer in canine cancer research. Let's begin with introducing yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me and dive into who I am or what I do. Okay. That's a long one. So that's like a podcast on itself. No, I guess we'll just go. I grew up on a rescue farm with my mom, and from there I've moved into the conventional veterinary field, working in that for quite a long time, and then sort of jumping ship back into holistic modalities because that's the way I was raised. So, kind of jumping back and forth between conventional and holistic, and then landing probably in my early 30s into the fully, okay, I got to go back to my roots and I need to be looking at holistic medicine. So, I founded and opened the very first licensed holistic veterinary hospital in Canada, and then shortly after that opened a huge 7,000 square foot integrative medicine hospital. And then from then I taught a 3-year postgraduate holistic veterinary medical program with human homeopathic doctors and veterinarians. And then I had 4 hospitals going, and then I kind of semi crashed and decided, well, I didn't decide. My doctors decided for me that I needed to sort of switch gears. But by then, I felt, pretty confident that there was enough really qualified people that could take over my patients because I had huge load of patients, if you can imagine, with 5 clinics. I think I had at one point 11 veterinarians working in these clinics. So I decided to sell my practices and move to Nova Scotia and kind of reassess my life and what I wanted to do. I bought a farm here, and not that far into it, maybe a year, I really decided that I wanted to bring the products and the formulations that I'd been working with in my veterinary hospitals for over 20 years to the public, because I felt like there's so many people that still don't have quality holistic veterinary medicine at their fingertips. And I really wanted to empower people to be able to navigate their animal's health at home and working with a veterinarian. So I decided to start Adored Beast Apothecary, launch that. I found an incredible business partner, and I'm sitting here now with a fairly large company. I also have a rescue farm that I live on. So I formulate and do all the research and development and education for Adored Beast. And then I started doing cancer research 5 years ago with Dalhousie University. And I have a medicinal mushroom forest where we grow medicinal mushrooms in nature because I'm a big advocate of the medicinal value of herbs and the medicinal value of mushrooms being exponentially more powerful, the wisdom that they hold when they're being planted and grown and harvested in their own environment, and the resilience that they have. I don't even think you can compare it to standardized things. So they're both really good, but my philosophy goes with things that are grown in nature. So I also have a medicinal mushroom forest. That's who I am. And I think when I sold my clinics, I had worked with more than 40,000 patients. And now I don't know how many thousands and thousands of people and animals that I work with through ABA. So, yeah, that's me.
When was Adored Beast Apothecary launched?
So, Adored Beast Apothecary is 8 years old now. The name came from my very, very first veterinary hospital, was called Adored Beast Veterinary Clinic. That had an interesting story too, because we were the first licensed holistic clinic. We weren't allowed to use any word with the name holistic or natural or integrative, or, I wasn't allowed to use those words. So I wanted to find a name that was different than a regular vet hospital and kind of spoke to why I do what I do. And I decided to call it Adored Beast Veterinary Clinic because I had a book on love, just all love through the centuries and history of love. And there was a whole chapter of it called Beast Adored. And when I was kept getting turned down name after name after name with the vet association, I was like, I don't know what to call it then. So I saw this and I put the name in Adored Beast Veterinary Hospital. And they said to me, well, it's not against the rules, but we think the word is offensive. And I think people will take offense to the word beast. By that time, I had been, fighting with them for so long. I just kind of said, oh, well, that would be good because then no one will come and you guys will be happy. So they gave it to me and everyone loved it. So I decided to name the Adored Beast Apothecary after my very first hospital.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I think it's the perfect name.
It is the perfect name. I think so too.
Yeah. Before we get deep into your research on canine cancer, I want to take a moment to dote on and talk about Adored Beast Apothecary as a whole. I absolutely love Adored Beast products. I can't put into words how full my heart is of its existence for our pets. It's clean sourcing, homeopathic, holistic, effective, and progressive. Amongst your standing robust line of probiotics, you all were the first to create species-specific probiotics, which are Felix's Flora for cats, Equine Gut Soothe for horses, Fido's Flora for dogs, and the Woof, a probiotic for dogs derived from the genetic footprint of a wolf, which absolutely blew my mind when I saw that. In addition, you have a soil and sea probiotic, which is the first chlorella-based probiotic on market. Truly revolutionary offerings. So within my at-home apothecary, I personally use and rotate between Felix's Flora and soil and sea probiotics. I also use Potency Omega-3, which is a concentrated high-potency EPA and DHA algae oil, supporting whole body health. And I give our girl Millie the liver tonic, which helps to detoxify the liver and regenerate healthy liver cells, boosting its ability to filter toxins from the blood. It was important to incorporate this one into Millie's routine because her young self went through a lot before the age of 1. She has hydrocephalus, so she was on medication for several months to control the fluid and pressure in her brain before having brain surgery to place a shunt. And then a few weeks later, she underwent revision surgery. So super thankful for liver tonic. There were a lot of meds and anesthesia to detox. So these are just the beginning of my Adored Beast journey. I look forward to using even more products in the future. I love you all so much and recommend your products and blog to every friend, family, acquaintance, and client I know. Your blog is absolutely amazing. It's informational, thorough, and I highly recommend it to everyone. I cannot thank you enough for what you do and for creating such amazing, effective, and truly holistic natural products for our furry companions. And so with all of that said, can you please speak a little about the conception, evolution, and mission of Adored Beast Apothecary?
Well, thank you very much. That was very sweet. That was really, really nice to hear. People like you are just, I sit in my office and my research area and everything, and I'm a little disconnected from front facing with people that are using the products, and hearing stuff like that is wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
So I guess the mission of ABA is really different than a lot of, I'm not even going to say maybe, is very different than many, many companies. When I had my vet hospital, I wouldn't use anything that was detrimental to the environment. When I first started, people that were sort of aware of working with cancer, researching alternatives for cancer, there was a lot of people using shark cartilage. So I'm just going to use this as an example. And I had lots of people coming to me saying, can you get shark cartilage? Can I use shark cartilage? And I refused to use it because for me, it was a total oxymoron. Like how do I try and alleviate suffering to one being, but create massive suffering to another, meaning the shark? And I shifted gears and started working with a traditional Chinese medicine doctor from China that really looked at medicinal mushrooms in a different way, very, very different way than what we were looking at them in North America. Well, looking at traditional Chinese medicine different. And I worked with him for 3 years on learning about medicinal mushrooms and using medicinal mushrooms instead of shark cartilage, and found the results exponentially, like not even comparable, so much better. So it's been my philosophy for a very long time to be solution based, but high level. So what's causing harm to our animals' bodies, what's causing harm to our bodies, and how does that sort of mirror or reflect the harm that we're creating on the planet or with the earth. So when I started ABA, I made that my mission to be looking at everything. So pets, people, and the planet. There's never for me a discrepancy. There just can't be. I'm probably the hardest business partner anyone could ever imagine in their entire life. I'm super hardcore as a boss when it comes to fiercely protecting that mission. I think we differ in a very, very big way. Like I'm just even going to explain to you because we can talk about this also with vital defense. We can dig into that a little deeper. But when we formulate something, because we won't use fillers of any kind, even formulating is a nightmare, because the way you can formulate super easy peasy is that you use silicone dioxide or maltodextrin or the million different kinds of fillers that sound completely, harmless, and there's always someone backing it how it's not harmful, or it's whatever. But when you use that, they're used so that you can make the serving sizes really easy. So even creating formulas and producing something that's like a 16th of a teaspoon, because I also produce things where I keep in mind that for me, in my experience in my life, which has been a lot with animals, one of their biggest joys is their food. So I didn't want to have a supplement company that says, here, give a scoop of this and a scoop of that. And these scoops are like a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons. And then all of a sudden, your animal's food tastes like herbs or supplements or beef flavor or chicken flavor instead of the food that they're eating. So we have a lot of moving parts with ABA, and we are really micro honed in on every single piece of what a supplement company would be in my eyes, and our end product being the best, not just the best ingredients, but what is the best for your animal's happiness. And when we source ingredients, every time we go to order something, we're constantly looking at, can we do better? Can we find a supplier that is even walking the talk of their true environmental ethics? Because the word sustainable is pretty greenwashed now. Sustainable often means that the company will be able to maintain its sustainability. Like, really, really, when you're constantly using something, nothing is really sustainable unless it becomes very commercialized. And the main idea is to have the company be sustainable, not sustainable for the environment. And what does that even mean, sustainable? So we're, shifting gears with constantly trying to do better, find better, and not even for us, but because there's a lot of companies out there where their products or their ingredients are expensive because of the way that they are environmentally conscious. It costs more money, and that's why a lot of people aren't truly environmentally conscious, because it costs more. Like, at the end of the day, it costs more. So then those people don't buy their ingredients, so they can't produce as much as they need to produce to start decreasing their costs. And we kind of not only ignore that fact, but we try and support it. So we'll purchase things that, the ingredients, we could buy an organic ingredient from one company, or we could buy an organic ingredient from another company that's saving water and working with the native community instead of going and commercializing and standardizing. We will then go and spend more money purchasing and supporting that company and those ingredients for a higher purpose, right? So it goes from there to me not being able to find medicinal mushrooms that I would want to actually be able to put into a product. So instead of saying, okay, well, fine, we're going to use these are the best that we can get, we purchased 100 acres of a forest and are growing our own. And then that forest is actually becoming an environmental project where I'm trying to show the government that forests are worth more than pulp and paper and lumber. So I'm trying to decrease the amount of clear cutting by creating templates to grow medicinal mushrooms and things like that in a forest. And I have this big rescue farm that is 100% supported by Adored Beast. So we fully fund this rescue farm, and we produce our own products. We formulate and do our own research. I refuse to use fish oil for many reasons. So we didn't launch a fish oil or a DHA or an EPA until we produced potency, which again has as much DHA and EPA as fish oil, but is produced on land completely environmentally and ethically supported, all the way up to our colostrum. We won't just produce something because people are asking, or our other companies are doing it because of a competitive space. I will only produce something when it fits for me, or when I've had an aha moment, or when I've been able to do research and development and produce it myself. So our colostrum is, in my opinion, not just as good as regular colostrum, because it's not colostrum, it's bovine serum isolate, and it's produced from the blood of cattle, grass-fed beef. The beef itself is used already for the meat, and the blood is actually discarded. So instead of discarding the blood, we have found a company that's taking that blood and the serum and producing higher amounts of 50% higher amounts of immunoglobulins than colostrum. It's not supporting the dairy industry, which I have very, very personal problems with. And it's also just superior in many ways for me because it's not systemic. So, people are the only things that continue to drink milk after they're weaned. And when we look at species specific, whether we look at species specific diets or species specific lifestyle or species specific probiotics, this is so much more species specific because it's made from blood. And animals would be consuming a lot of blood when they hunt in comparison to something that's made from breast milk of a different species. So we have a lot going on at one time. We're not just a supplement company that goes, "Oh, here's a formula, let's make it." And those companies are amazing too. So this isn't about who's better, who's not better. I'm someone that believes in really a lot of support in the industry in general, that we need to be supporting each other, not I'm not a very competitive person. So for me, Adored Beast is never from comes from a place of competition, and I really stay in my own lane from a perspective of what fits with my philosophy. What have I seen in the last 35 years that works? What am I using on my rescue farm that I can see profound changes in the animals that come in here? What did I use in my practice that I saw, nothing short of miracles happen with thousands and thousands and thousands of patients? So we are very unique. We do our own research and development. We produce our own products. We manufacture our own products. Our eyeballs and fingers and everything is in every single solitary thing that we do. Yeah, we are really a different a different company, and I'm always just looking at nature and trying to see what's affecting nature and how is that eventually going to affect our pets, our bodies, our cells. How do we work with nature? How do we learn from nature and not try just to take nature and shove it in a box and say that we're a natural company? It's like, no, we need to pay attention to nature and we need to learn from nature and then convert what she's teaching us into, solidify and produce products and education around that.
I love it. It's just another reason why I love Adored Beast so much. There's so much integrity behind the product and process. It's a company and a product that I trust that is the best of the best because all of what you just said goes into it. And I didn't know all of those details, but I can feel it through the product, through the website, through the blogs. I feel the integrity and all the love that goes into it. So it's just many, many reasons why it's amazing and I love it so much.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for all that you do putting into it and keeping the interconnection with the earth and nature and animals and thinking outside the box and getting the colostrum from the blood versus the milk. I mean, that makes sense. And that was something that I didn't think of until you mentioned it. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Well, let's talk about your canine cancer research. This topic is near and dear to my heart. I lost my soul kitty Monkey Bean in 2017 to intestinal lymphoma. However, a frequent cancer in cats, it should never be normalized. More and more pets are obtaining cancer and at younger and younger ages. The statistics are staggering, with almost half of dogs over 10 years of age being diagnosed with cancer and 1 in 4 developing cancer in their lifetime. Your research is changing the cancer game, providing tangible hope and preventative care and treatment for cancer without harsh side effects and compromising quality of life. Can you please walk us through your newly profound findings during the 5-year-long canine cancer research project carried out at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia?
Sure. I can. So it is, and it's still continuing, right? I think this research is probably going to be a very long project. I'll tell you how it started. I'm someone that believes in synergy so much. I don't believe that there's coincidences or anything like that. I also believe that my animals have always guided me to my higher purpose. This all started because I have this rescue farm and I have a lot of rescue horses. And I wanted to do a free choice medicinal herb project where I would plant different herbs and do all the diagnostics on the horses and then put tags on their halters and get students to come and watch them to see exactly what they're eating, which herbs they're going to, how much of which herb that they're eating, and then see if they can actually choose the herbs that they need. So I'd put this whole project together and I sent it to Dalhousie and said, I'm looking for some postgraduates, I'm looking for some undergrads, I'm looking for, some students that would be interested in coming here and working for me to do this project. And a couple of weeks later, I got a call from a professor there and said, we saw your project. It's very interesting, but what we find more interesting is we looked at your website and, found out a little bit more about you, and we have a question for you. Have you ever worked with cancer? And I said, well, yes, and unfortunately probably way too much because my vet clinic was an alternative clinic. So if someone didn't want to do chemo, we saw them. So we probably saw and worked and treated more cancer than the majority of veterinary hospitals. We do have oncologists, but a lot of people don't go to oncology. So they work with their clinic. So we just saw tons of cancer. So he said, would you be interested in coming in and having a meeting with us? And I said, of course. So I went in and they sat me down and we talked for a long period of time. And they said, we would love to work with you. Could you write a hypothesis of what you think you would do if you did cancer research? And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, well. So I went home and I really thought about it. And I thought about everything that I used and all the different kinds of cancers that I saw and all the knowledge and wisdom that was, given to me from some really, really wise, like I said, my TCM teacher and my homeopathic teachers and my herbalists and all the wisdom that I got working with these incredibly beautiful animals and their pet parents. And I came up with one of the first cancers that I really wanted to look at was osteosarcoma. Probably one of the most painful ones I've seen. And by the time it's diagnosed, it's usually so far gone that there's not a lot of treatment for it. So I really felt like there wasn't a lot of available, even conventionally, right? Not a lot of available options for dogs that were getting osteosarcoma or cats. But I sat down and I thought about osteosarcoma, and then I thought about the medicinal mushrooms I used with it, and I thought about, okay, well then how do we carry it in, and what synergistically could work well with it, and we know blah 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 blah. The way I learned about medicinal mushrooms was called their characteristics or their signature of that plant or that mushroom. And what I learned is to look at the tumor, to look at the cancer physiologically, like from a cellular perspective, look at what the cancer externally looked like, and try and match the cancer with the appropriate medicinal mushroom. How it grew, how invasive it was, what it affected, and things like that. So when you look at chaga, and we know there's lots of research around the ability of chaga being able to control cancer and being cytotoxic and things like that. And so I knew that, but I also felt like there was something missing. And I dug into months and months and months of reading every single paper I could read on chaga. And then thinking, how do we get it to a more cellular level? Because when you look at chaga growing out of a tree, and if you go on our website, if you look in the cancer research part of it, or you go on and look at the cancer research on YouTube that I did, you can see a picture of an X-ray of a bone tumor, and then we have a picture of chaga coming out of the tree and the invasiveness in which it is attached to the tree and comes out through the tree. They look almost identical. So I decided that I was going to use chaga, but then I wanted to see what else in nature would be this like perfect pairing that would be able to take the medicinal value of chaga and take it to more of a cellular level. And I chose phytoplankton. And I've worked with phytoplankton so much with chronic disease and inflammatory bowel disease and animals with cancer where they weren't able to absorb food, but the phytoplankton that we use is actually absorbed into the cell and doesn't even have to be digested. It's smaller than a red blood cell, and it has the ability to enter a cell. So I wrote up this whole hypothesis of how I thought these two synergistic bioactive compounds could work together. And I took it to them, and they thought it was amazing. So then I went to my amazing business partner and said, I want to do this with Dalhousie, but I want to own it. I really want to be able to maintain control of this project. So we invested in it personally and started the project and decided what other cells to use, because this is where my cancer experience as a researcher I didn't have, where I leaned heavily on the scientists with Dal, which were amazing with me. And we decided what cells to purchase. So they wanted to be like, okay, well, let's see that, cancer's rampant in dogs, like more than 1 in 2 dogs will get cancer in their lifetime. So they were like, what other cancers do you want to look at? So we did liver cancer cells, we did breast cancer cells, we did all different kinds of cells with dog, with canine, and with humans. So we started the research, and I found out very quickly that cancer research is so well defined from a perspective of you have to stay in the box. And I'm not someone that's very good at staying in any boxes. I had a very hard time initially saying to them, "Yeah, but what about this? And I don't wanna do it that way, and I wanna see how phytoplankton and chaga play together. I don't wanna go, 'Okay, we're the scientists, or you're the scientist, and I'm the researcher, or I'm the developer of this, so we're gonna take this, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna put them together and see what they do.'" It's like, I wanna learn. I wanna be able to do this with how they're teaching us. I wanna do this research project different, but I also had to do it within the confinements, right? Within that structure in order to be taken seriously, in order to be able to be peer reviewed and get into journals and things like that. It took me to work with them for about a year for us to really start jiving together and them understanding what I'm looking for. So I would say, let's do this, this, and this and see what happens. Let's see what the chaga and the phytoplankton tell us. Let's look at how they want to play together rather than us telling them how we want them to play together. So that's what we started doing. And it was unbelievable. Soon as we were allowing it to dictate to us, and to do that, we had to do so many variations. You have no idea. And I think that that was the really big difference, is the variations that we used to get the information that we needed. And I wanted to look at cancer prevention and chronic disease prevention, and I wanted to do all this stuff, and we couldn't because it's outside of the box of cancer, which a lot of people don't understand how cancer research, including myself, is done. So we're going into our second year, I think, and I went into Dalhousie one day, and every single scientist had this like massive smirk on their face, and they were so excited to talk to me. And we sat down and they said, look at what happened. So we found this ratio that was incredibly cytotoxic, but at the same time helped to maintain the healthy cells. And that's what every cancer, I mean, even the Canadian Cancer Association, that is what is always the stumbling point, right? There's lots of things that are cytotoxic and kill cancer cells, but they kill the healthy cells equally as fast or as much. So that's where we see those side effects of chemo and radiation and all of this stuff. So to find something that helped to maintain the healthy cells, but that were also very cytotoxic and specific cytotoxic, which means that the cancer cells are vulnerable to it, and the healthy cells aren't. So we saw this, and I was really excited. So at that point, I went back to Dion and said, we have to do a piggyback study now. It can't be within the cancer. We have to see what this is doing to try and help prevent the chronic cellular, havoc that happens prior to cancer. Like if it's going to do this with cancer, surely to goodness, it's going to be doing something on a cellular level to help prevent all the things that cause cancer, like oxidative stress and pro-inflammatory cytokines and inflammation and all of that stuff. Because those words are not just for cancer, right? Those words are chronic disease related. And even though cancer is the scary word, working in this industry for a very long time, I have a very different take on what I think causes cancer and what I think cancer even is, that we can talk about if you want to in a bit. But the amount of chronic disease that I saw taking the lives of animals are equally as scary to me as cancer. The fact that dogs have to walk around with cones on their heads because if they don't, they scratch themselves, they self-mutilate themselves from skin disease. The amount of Cushing's, the amount of diabetes, the amount of inflammatory bowel disease that eventually leads to lymphoma.
Yes.
To me, they aren't separated. They're all one thing. Chronic disease and cancer to me is the same thing. It's not like cancer just jumps out from around the corner and you have cancer. To me, cancer is an expression or the end result of us ignoring or suppressing our body's initial signs that there's something going sideways, right? Like from a simple ear infection or a bladder infection or a skin rash or a hot spot or vomiting or diarrhea. Like those are all ways the body's saying, I'm out of homeostasis. There's something wrong. I can't maintain the amount of toxins that are coming in. The body's not responding anymore, right? It's kind of in chaos. So when you look at that, my point of the cancer research was to do this side research to go, if it can be cytotoxic and support healthy cells, can it also support these healthy cells before the cancer cells start to develop? Because I feel like what happens is that our bodies are, or animals' bodies, our bodies are wired to survive. And our cells are dying at a rate from pollution, environmental toxins, the stuff that's in our food or not in our food, like not enough vitamins and nutrients. With animals, like over vaccinating them, putting toxic flea stuff on them, our hormone disruptors on our floor cleaners. I mean, I could sit here for a whole podcast and talk about things that cause damage in our cells. What happens, I believe, is that these things are happening in our cells, and finally our cells just go, we don't know what to do anymore, so we're just going rogue, right? We are just going to start producing more cells than we know what to do with because we don't know what to do. And when that happens, those cells are rogue and those cells aren't in perfect harmony, and they really don't even know what they're doing, and they become not normal, right? Those cells become abnormal cells because they are not given any guidance. They're just these rogue cells. So I was convinced that we would be able to find ways of slowing down or helping to navigate that process before our bodies or our animal's body goes into this survival mechanism, which eventually creates cancer cells. So we started piggybacking two other research projects, and we were very lucky because of what we were seeing with the cancer project. We started getting government funding. I guess it was 2 years ago now, and maybe Dalhousie or the scientists said, okay, we have to start putting this research out to journals and see if we can get peer reviewed in journals. So we did, but they told me not to keep my hopes up because it was a mammalian study, which means it was for people and for dogs. And usually the studies that get peer reviewed and published are very specific. They're like either for dogs or people or rats or pigs or horses or whatever. But we put it in anyways, and we were actually peer reviewed and published in two of the biggest medical journals out there. And one was for cancer, and the other one was oxidative stress and looking at cancer prevention and chronic disease prevention. That's where we're sitting. And the long term goal of this is the cancer research part is hopefully soon going to be going into the hands of a vet university to do live dog studies and trials. And that product will be in the hands of veterinarians so that if your animal develops cancer, it will be an actual cancer treatment in veterinary hospitals. And the other part of it that we still don't have, like we can't publish it yet. We're just compiling all the information. It's all about prevention of chronic disease, how to support and keep the cells maintained and healthy. They're two different things, kind of the same, but different. So I wanted to find something that the working pet parent, the pet parent that doesn't have the ability to, not go to work and just focus on their animal or hire someone to come in, or I wanted to find something that they could take their animal to a vet. They could give them this treatment, and the treatment would, yes, be addressing the cancer, but more importantly for me, give this animal quality of life. Because the amount of animals that I've been around, which I have my entire life, when I have been working with these animals in my clinics or working with them in my own life, I think that that's more important than animals, than longevity, is their quality of life, their everyday moment, their everyday experience. How is their life? To me, that's what they're focusing on. They're not focusing on how long are they going to live. They focus more on what is their life in each and every moment. That was my goal, and why I'm so excited and feel so blessed with this project is that's looking like what this project is going to turn out to be, is something that is going to give quality of life, hopefully longevity of life. There should be no reason why it won't. But more importantly, something that people can manage and also give the quality of life that I feel like each and every animal deserves.
You mentioned minimal side effects that would come with it. Can you speak on what those side effects would be?
Well, we don't know yet. I mean, in our mice studies, they didn't really have any side effects. I mean, they're monitored unbelievably closely. We do know that some of the healthy cells do die, but they are unbelievably minimal in comparison to chemo or radiation. We won't know until we do the live dog studies, right? So then we will see what the side effects are. Are they manageable? Which I can't see why they wouldn't be. Personally, I went through my own personal journey with Lyme disease. And, the die-off effect and stuff, the way my naturopath and the way I treat myself is the same way that I do with my family and my animals, which is working at a pace where if you're feeling a little yucky, it's super manageable, right? It far weighs out the risk and benefits. You might feel a little foggy or maybe slightly nauseous until you have something to eat, but it didn't affect my ability to work. It didn't affect my ability to have fun and be engaged with my animals and go to the barn. And, like my life was still pretty normal, but I still did have some minimal side effects, right? Or effects of the Lyme dying.
Amongst Adored Beast Apothecary's revolutionary products, you newly released another, first of its kind on the market, a chaga mushroom and phytoplankton combo called Vital Defense, which supports cellular health and combats free radical damage, a product conceived out of your stunning findings in canine cancer research. Can you tell us about the birth of Vital Defense and its duties in the body?
So Vital Defense is coming from that secondary research project where I started looking at what causes chronic disease and how do we navigate chronic disease? How do we mitigate it? How do we look at the body to see if we can slow down what the body thinks it's supposed to do while maintaining the health and the integrity of the cells? So it is the same ingredients that we're using in the cancer research for the treatment perspective of it, but it's coming from the research that we've done to look at oxidative stress, to look at inflammation, to look at pro-inflammatory cytokines, all of that stuff. So I think Vital Defense is also my opportunity to try and educate people around prevention, period, right? So prevention with, like I said, with chronic disease, with autoimmune diseases, with all different things like that. So when we look at toxins and when we look at how our bodies are built to survive, what I've noticed is that when we're not paying attention, when I was talking about our cells going rogue, it's not just our cells that go rogue with cancer, but our cells go rogue with autoimmune disease, right? They start to attack themselves. Well, that's not cancer, but it's our cells actually attacking our own cells. What's happening that all of a sudden, our bodies go into recognizing our own cells as an enemy. It's not cancer, but it's very similar, right? It's a similar situation where the body becomes really confused and overreacts, and the cells start doing things on their own without them being orchestrated, right? Without this perfect balance of it speaking to itself and knowing exactly what it's supposed to do. So when we look at something called free radicals are something that's in the body that's supposed to be naturally in the body and working in the body as a benefit. But when we are bombarded with toxins, like I said before, like in our food, in our environment, in our air, in our clothes, on our dogs' beds, what we're feeding ourselves, what we're feeding our animals. Like I said, I could do a whole podcast on what the body is being bombarded with every day. And then what happens is that the free radicals, when there's so much toxic insult, the free radicals go rogue then. And they start to create oxidative stress with the cells. When that oxidative stress happens, the cells become incredibly damaged. And then inflammation happens. And then the inflammation and the oxidative stress causes disease. And then what's super interesting is that then that disease then creates more free radicals. So it becomes this vicious cycle of the toxins coming in, the cells going rogue, inflammatory response happening, chronic disease happening, and then chronic disease creating more free radicals. And that doesn't even include all the drugs that get added because you have a disease or because your animals have a disease that then causes more toxins. Breaking that cycle, trying to break that cycle, that is what vital defense is about. It's trying to be able to add and regulate and derail the amount of oxidative stress. So stop it in its tracks by neutralizing the free radicals. So it actually has the ability to neutralize free radicals that then stops or mitigates or slows down that process of chronic inflammatory disease, chronic disease, and then more free radicals.
What is the recommended use for vital defense for either prevention or one with an illness?
As a prevention, like health and longevity, I recommend doing it at the change of each season. When the barometric pressure is changing, when there's more stress on the body to either regenerate or slow down. So, between spring and fall, between fall and winter, between winter and spring, spring and summer, for a month in between those seasons. That's one recommendation. The other recommendation is if there's something going on, like let's say there's a forest fire nearby, let's say there's a lot of flooding, so you're going to get a lot of like fungus and mold and stuff like that, renovations in your house, emotional stress of, moving or going to a boarding facility or, a pet sitter coming in because you're going on vacation, because stress can cause free radical damage as well and oxidative stress. So using it as a proactive measure in times of stress. If you think that it's flu season coming up, you're reading the paper and all of a sudden you read that, Bordetella or kennel cough is on the rise, you could immediately start using it. And then for geriatric animals that are older, I recommend doing it every day as an ongoing support. And for animals that have chronic disease or dealing with something like cancer or some kind of chronic disease, and you'll obviously be working with your vet, but you can do it every single day.
Is it safe to do every single day for a healthy animal?
Yes, it is safe to do every single day for a healthy animal. But saying that, I really feel like the body resonates with things when you rotate them, when you work with other things, right? Because a lot of these bioactive ingredients are considered food, and you would have been getting them through different kinds of foods and things like that, and herbs and flowers and whatever. They would be seasonal, right? We would be eating them seasonally.
Right.
It's just like we wouldn't be eating grapes every day. We're built to have certain medicinal things. I don't consider probiotics medicinal, by the way. I consider probiotics something that you need every single day. But other than that, if they're herbs or supplements or nutraceuticals or mushrooms and things like that, I really recommend rotation. I recommend rotation with probiotics, but I recommend taking a probiotic every day. But when it comes to everything else, I like rotating things.
Thank you for that tidbit of knowledge. Would you say vital defense is more for cancer prevention, or would it still help a pet already diagnosed with cancer?
What I would say in that case is that it has been formulated and sold as a product to support, regenerate, renew, rebalance, and help cells recover. Definitely, it's being sold as a support for chronic disease, right? And all you have to do for people that are listening is go in and look at those words: pro-inflammatory cytokines, oxidative stress, chronic inflammation or systemic inflammation, free radicals. Look at all of those words, like Google those words and see what it comes up with. See what diseases and what pathologies are attached to those words. Those words are what those ingredients have an affinity for, right? That's in their wheelhouse to help and support. If you had a dog with cancer or a cat with cancer, and you are, working with your veterinarian and you want to add something as a supportive measure or an alternative measure and support with your animal with cancer, vital defense would be one of them to bring on board for sure. And can I say, oh yes, it's gonna, it's gonna get rid of your cancer, it's gonna do this? There's no way I can say that. And like I said, it isn't the one that we are researching for cancer treatment, but I can say it's the same ratio, and I can say it's the same ingredients.
Okay, and that leads me perfectly into my next question is what would be the difference between Vital Defense and the one that you are currently still in progress and trials on?
So, vital defense are the crude substances too, right? So, it's the extraction, it's the way we've extracted it for the research, the cancer research as well. When it comes to the chaga, the phytoplankton is in the correct ratio, but it hasn't been at all manipulated. So, in the cancer research, we are in fact manipulating it and focusing on certain isolates and focusing on certain bioactives. It's probably going to be like an intravenous injection, I would imagine. That's probably the way it's going to be delivered, I think, in comparison to Vital Defense, which is the exact same strains, but not manipulated of the phytoplankton, and the chaga being the same ratio and the same way we extracted it for the research, for both research.
When you say manipulation, can you explain what that means?
Yeah, for sure. So when we're feeding something and we are, giving something for support, I always like to try and use it in its most natural form. Whereas when we are looking at the cancer research treatment, we are isolating it. We're breaking it down. We're taking chaga and we're breaking down the bioactives and the medicinal components. And we're using those medicinal components, those singular and isolated medicinal components, we're bringing them out and using them rather than just using everything.
Mm.
We're finding out what's cytotoxic. We're pulling things out. Like the phytoplankton has been manipulated so that we're removing certain things and allowing certain things to stay.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you have a timeline when the version for veterinarian offices will be ready to help those who need it most?
Well, I think, for me to be really hopeful, I would say maybe 3 years, maybe. But to be more realistic, I would probably say another 5.
Okay.
It's a long process. It's a really, really, really long process. But like I said, potentially 3. And there's going to be more studies coming out. We're going to be bringing out more studies on our vital defense. Then we'll be able to speak a bit more to what we've seen. And then, we'll be putting it in to be peer reviewed in journals and things like that. The research is done, but to compile the research and put it into the way that you need to put it into in order to send it to a medical journal and have it peer reviewed takes a really, really long time. There's a lot of information.
Okay, so from the research, the combo of chaga and phytoplankton is beneficial for humans as well.
Yeah, in this study that we used human breast cancer cells, human liver cancer cells, human osteosarcoma cells, and human lymphoma cells. I think it's lymphoma cells. I'm so focused on the animal stuff, it's terrible. In the animal side, it was liver, osteo, breast, and histiocytosis.
That's pretty amazing. That's remarkable work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I mean, I take everything of mine, right? We're not supposed to say people can take it, but every single solitary thing that we use it's not, I can't even say human grade because it's beyond human grade. Like it's the best of the best. My entire farm uses it. Like my employees who take it, especially flu season, or they take it if they get injured, or they take it if they're sick, or as prevention, or There's nothing stopping people from taking it, but we definitely can't recommend it or sell it as a human product yet. My medicine cabinet is pretty much that's all it is our products. And, the same at the barn. It's funny, you'll go down and, they'll have a thing of organic. I give everybody organic juices and stuff that works in the barn. And you'll see someone, you'll know that they're maybe starting to feel sick or they're whatever, not just feeling the greatest. And they're mixing gut soothe, phytoplankton, and liver tonic and mixing it in their juice and drinking it, right? Like right from the horses, the big buckets of it that I have for the horses. Yeah, I mean, Stephanie, one of our employees, she used to be my PA and now she's in sales and, she's amazing. And she had really bad asthma and was on a puffer. And I gave her a couple homeopathic remedies and put her on gut soothe. And she doesn't even have to use her puffer anymore. I always say a cell is a cell. Animals are more sensitive than people. So there's certain things that people can take that you wouldn't give to animals, or you wouldn't give it to them on a regular basis, right? Like white willow bark or something like that. But the opposite is less true as far as herbs and nutraceuticals and natural substances go. There's not a lot that an animal can have. If anything, I can't even think of it, that an animal could have that a person couldn't have. So from a grass perspective, which is called generally recognized as safe by the FDA or by Health Canada, there's a lot more things that you can't put in animal products than that you can in people products. From that perspective, there's never a concern. And I always say a cell is a cell. So what causes oxidative stress? What causes your liver to become toxic? What causes free radicals to go rogue? What causes an autoimmune disease to happen? A cell is a cell. So what causes an unhealthy cell in a person causes an unhealthy cell in an animal. Our cells are pretty much the same. Our anatomy and physiology and stuff is different, especially with like reptiles but that's a lot of when it comes to drugs, right? Because drugs are built very, very sort of like specific. They're made to be able to do things across the board. Whereas herbs, they're different. They work differently than drugs. They are different than drugs. And that was what was cool with the research too. It's like the body knows what it needs. So when I formulate something, I formulate it very carefully. Like I don't supersize anything. My concept of formulations is diligently looking at how things play with each other. How do certain plants play with each other in nature? How did this phytoplankton and chaga play with each other when it came to dealing with cancer cells? That's what I look at. So when I create a formula, I'm never worried that it's going to affect something differently because I never supersize the ingredients. I finely tune the ingredients to support each other to create a larger effect. So how that works is that if your cat is taking something like, let's say, gut soothe, and it's taking it, and a dog is taking gut soothe. I mean, there's a bit of a difference because there's no aloe in the cat one. But let's just use the concept of gut soothe. If your kitty is going down the road of asthma, like feline asthma, it is so supportive of helping to derail that, helping to support the cells with that, the mucosal lining, the cells of the mucosal lining. Your cat's body will know that the ingredients of that gut soothe needs to go to its lungs. Whereas a dog with diarrhea, that dog's body will inherently understand those herbs and everything and probiotics and stuff. And that formula will focus on the gut. That's how I formulate things. I don't formulate like, oh, this is for this and this is for that and this is for this and this is for that. It's such a much bigger picture. It's a very individualized reaction. And I would say when I formulate, I look at my experience of working with every single one of those ingredients with a million different, pathologies and a million different, individual animals and their reactions of what I saw. So it comes from just the empirical experience of working with so many animals in my clinics. But it also comes from being raised in nature and seeing how things work together and seeing something, traumatic happen in nature. Like, let's even just use a clear cutting, or let's use a fire, or let's use something like that, and watching how it regenerates, right? Like really being in the thick of that, and in being immersed in nature and watching nature heal, right? Watching the way nature knows how to put its homeostasis back together.
This is all very exciting, and I look forward to what's coming our way next and what you have up your sleeve. Thank you for making this world a better place for our furry loves and ourselves.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And thank you for taking, like I always say, it's funny. I have this very sweet woman that works for us at our facility in Montana. And the first time I ever met her, she was actually working for somebody else. And I was lecturing, I think I was lecturing about cancer and about medicinal mushrooms and stuff. And she said to me, "Oh, I just find it so fascinating. And, thank you for doing what you're doing," and blah, 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 blah. And I said, "Well, I look at the connection that we have with people the same way as I look at the forest floor and the forest in general. And that if I didn't have the support of like the trees, right? Like the forest has the support of the mycelium of the mushrooms to communicate and to give nutrition and bring nutrition. And the mother tree sends nutrition to specific areas of the forest through the mycelium of mushrooms underground." I said to her, "I just don't feel like we're any different than the forest. It's like, I have the information kind of like a mother tree, and you guys are the myceliums that send out that information throughout the world. Without each other, we would have nothing."
Without each other, we would have nothing. That's powerful and thought-provoking. Such an overall beautiful analogy. And I agree, we do need each other. You're so right. And it's an honor to be your mycelium.
Awesome.
Are there any closing thoughts or knowledge you would like to share?
I think that we're moving at such a incredible speed, the world and our philosophies and how we work with our animals and how we treat our animals, and how we're treating ourselves, and natural compared to conventional. And I think that right now, you just said you were having this intuitive feeling, but I think that the number one thing is that we can't have a lot of guilt, and we can't put a lot of pressure on ourselves, because when we do, we go into our brain. And our brain is wonderful, but it's a very small part of our knowledge, and it's a very small part of our wisdom. And I feel like we all have that. Nobody has it more and nobody has it less. We've all been born with that innate wisdom. It's just whether or not it's been taken away from us, or we've been supported to learn more about it, or whether we've been allowed or had the education to even be, yes. And, that's good that you're tapping into your intuitive wisdom or your innate wisdom, whatever we want to call it. And I think that we get so full of doing what's right or what's wrong, or especially with our animals, right? Because we can't speak their language, and we've been taught for so long that, only vets know what to do with animals because they don't speak. Whereas for me, we speak to our animals way more than a vet does, from a perspective of that connection, and getting quiet enough and understanding enough what they need, and what's working, right? Like, you can give something to your animal, but is it working? And how do you know what's working? Because with animals, what happens is, if it's not working, sometimes you don't know it's not working until the symptoms are screaming in your face. And by then, there's been a lot of damage. Whereas if you are centered and focused and allow your time to be able to understand your animal when it's sick, not sick, when it's scared, when it's not scared, you can navigate your animal's health so much better than anyone can, because you know them. And the symptoms are everything, right? Seeing subtle signs. You might say to your partner, "Oh, you know what? My tummy hurts, so I'm just going to go put a heating pad on it or a hot water bottle on it or something. Whereas an animal can't say that to you, right? It can't say, okay, when you give me this stuff, it makes me feel sick or I'm really not feeling well. But if you see it get up and go in the sunshine and lie in the sun, when it doesn't normally lie in the sun, you're like, okay, it's seeking heat. Why is it doing that? Right? Like just learning the way that they communicate with us is massive.
Yes, I agree. They're always communicating with us both behaviorally and telepathically. If we just get a little quiet and tune into them by observation, feeling, or hearing, if we just listen, there's a lot to learn. They have a lot to say, and they want to help us help them and ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And for people that are afraid that they don't have that, because there's lots of people out there probably listening to this going, I just don't have that intuitive nature. I just don't have that ability to quiet my mind, right? I'm too stressed, I'm too this, I'm too that. But we do have the ability of observation, right?
Right.
So, again, like don't feel like, if you're listening to this podcast, you have to be, meditating and quiet and whatever, because that's enough to stress you out as well. I'm too stressed out. I can't do that, blah, blah. So it's more like, what's my power of observation? Okay, well, my dog or my cat normally sleeps right in the middle of my bed. She sleeps stretched out, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's not sleeping on my bed. She now is sleeping on that chair and she's super curled up. Building your power of what fits for you, because we're not all the same. We're all very different, and that's a good thing. So if your power is observation rather than intuitive feeling, then use that, build on that, get it to be a power tool for you. It doesn't really matter so long as the end result is that you're connecting and you're understanding.
Beautifully said. I always say everything they do is for good reason. It's our duties to observe and ask the questions, do the research, get the professional help.
Mm-hmm.
As their caretakers, it's our duty to figure it out and meet their needs.
Yeah, a lot of times you hear this thing, oh, well, you're a helicopter mom or you're a helicopter dad or you're a helicopter parent. Usually when you are like that, it means that you're picking something up that you don't know how to deal with, right? Like you're picking something up that you're trying to prevent. You're trying to prevent them getting sick, or you're just sensing something happening. And because we aren't naturally allowed to speak from a place of, oh, he's doing this, that looks a bit weird, I'm a bit concerned about that. Oh, you're over worrying, or you're this or you're that. Like it's often negated at a very subtle level. Then you either start to negate it yourself, being, oh, I'm just being a helicopter mom, or you become hyper vigilant and then everything looks horrible.
Right.
I kind of blame that on society and our inability to just be allowed to speak to something that maybe someone else can't see and be taken seriously about it.
Well, this has all been very amazing. Can you let everyone know where they can find Adored Beast Apothecary, social handles, and all the fun stuff?
It's just adoredbeast.com or adoredbeast.ca for the websites. Adored Beast Apothecary on Instagram, and we have an Adored Beast Apothecary Facebook page.
Thank you so much for joining us, Julie. Your knowledge, products, and unwavering commitment to the health of our animals and planet is revered. It's been such an honor to have you. We love Adored Beast so much, and now many more will too, and we appreciate you so, so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it too.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Feline and Friends podcast. It is created, hosted, produced, and released with love, and my hope is you learn something along the way. When we know better, we do better. Please share your knowledge and our podcast with others. For more educational content, follow us on your favorite podcast platform, as well as Instagram at The Holistic Feline and online at theholisticfeline.com, where you will also find our blog that includes corresponding posts for each podcast episode with links to all the good stuff. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next episode.
The Holistic Feline and Friends podcast, website, blog, and socials are for informational and educational purposes only. All information, suggestions, recommendations, or comments, whether by written, verbal, audio, or otherwise, either direct, indirect, or association, is not a substitute for professional veterinary care. Please provide your pets with a minimum annual professional veterinary visit and more often when health concerns arise. The Holistic Feline, Angela Warwick, and all guests and associates are speaking from experience and education. Please continue your research and form your own opinion. This is in no way a means to diagnose.